Hello and welcome to Farm Journal Live. I'm editor Clint Griffiths from a rainy newsroom here in northern Indiana as we come to you here on a Thursday. Of course, plenty of news happening around the country, including the Wisconsin State Fair. Just some breaking news that has just been announced that fair will not happen this year. We've got a great map on agweb.com. You can go there and take a look. It shows all of the state fairs and the status of those fairs, so make sure you go check it out. Let's get to some other news here as we start today. Happening right now, you can sign up for the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. Roughly $16 billion now available for a variety of agricultural commodities, specifically those that suffered a 5% or greater decline in prices as a result of COVID-19. Getting signed up, happening and started this week. Helping oversee a lot of that, we have Undersecretary Bill Northey joining us now. And Undersecretary, how's it going so far now that we're a few days in?
Well, we're learning how to do it over the phone and over the internet versus over the counter. And we're seeing a lot of folks come in. We had over 10,000 folks that the first day started applications, over 5,000 that finished their application, got it to our approval process. About 100 of those got approved on Tuesday, the first day of sign up, and their information's been sent to our payment system, and we should get a check to them pretty soon. So a good start, but we probably will see somewhere between 800,000 and maybe 1 million people come into the office. So we've got a long ways to go in the next 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
But simple process, and we're seeing folks come in.
Well, good. Yeah, I was going to say, you know, it is one of those. It encompasses a lot of different commodities here. How complicated was it to get this set up? I mean, you didn't have a very long timeline to get rolling.
You know, it was a real challenge. We're trying to set it up right in the midst of understanding what was the impact of COVID. So prices were bouncing around. We're trying to figure out whether to set it up on sales or on inventory. We saw prices go down. How do we compensate for that? And as you say, it's for, feeder cattle and for asparagus. And so we had to figure out how in the world do you create that. So it was a challenge, but we also knew it had to be simple. Our farmers are busy. Our offices are going to be busy, and we're going to do this over the phone or over email versus over the counter. So it needed to be a handful of numbers from each of the producers over each of these commodities.
Have you learned anything thus far that, hey, we've kind of figured out this is a best practice? Go do this first and then do that, as far as steps in the process go?
Yeah, we see a lot of folks that start right on our farmers.gov/CFAP, Coronavirus Food Assistance Program webpage. Farmers.gov, the top banner is for the CFAP. Has all the information there. It even has a form that you can print out, put information. It even has a calculator where you can put that information into a spreadsheet. Then it'll print out a form. You can sign it, send it in, take a picture of it, email it in, call your office, making sure that they know that it's coming. But that's the place where a lot of folks start. Now, we do have some commodities that are not a part of that yet, and we're still getting information on those commodities, how we include maple syrup and crawfish and lots of other commodities out there that we didn't have time to put together yet, but we want them to be able to be included if there was a 5% price drop and an impact from COVID.
Undersecretary, I know obviously, this is a moving target, but just to remind people, how's that 80-20 split work? So you're just getting paid on 80% of it now, and if there's money left over, we go to 20%. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right. So we'll make 80% of the payment as soon as we get the approval done. And then the 20%, you don't need to do anything else. You just come in. If we decide partway through the process, we're going to have no problem running out of money, therefore that we can go ahead and make that last 20%, we'll go ahead and cut that check. If we've got to get all the way to the end to make sure we have enough money, then we'll decide if we need to prorate that last 20%. But it'd be prorated if we're getting close and running out of money. But that 20%, I believe we have enough in the program to cover all the applicants. But it was hard to estimate how many folks had grain on hand, how many cattle actually got sold during that time period, and certainly the losses in specialty crops. So it was important to be able to manage that money in a way that the people that show up later in the sign up have an equal chance at being able to be paid as opposed to the folks that come in early in the process.
Obviously, this is a conversation for the folks in Congress, but do you think there's enough money there to cover the losses that we've seen from COVID? It's been, like you said, it's been a moving target, but over the last month and a half, boy, it has been almost an unprecedented impact.
It really has, and my simple answer is no. 16 billion is a lot of money, right?
Right.
But you spread that about all across agriculture. You look at the impact out there, and I've heard estimates of the impact being at least 3 times that much, maybe 4 times that much. We're really just covering most of the first quarter loss for those commodities that we're able to fit into our formulas. We're not covering second quarter losses very much. We're not covering inventory losses. We're covering none of the 2020 crop that's going in the ground right now as well. And we all know that's being impacted. So I do think Congress will look at that and say, not enough for my folks, and they'll find a way to be able to add to it. Certainly, it does not cover all those losses right now.
As far as the rest of the programs that you oversee there with FSA, is there anything else on your radar that we need to be thinking about at this time of year, or maybe we need to be contacting our office about to kind of keep us engaged beyond just this CFAP program?
Yeah, there's always other programs. Certainly the farm loan program, we have some special provisions there to help folks that have farm loan payments and are struggling to be able to make those. There's rural development, a part of USDA, a different mission area than ours, has just announced a business and industry loan that's available to farmers if their loan limits exceed the Farm Service Agency loan limits. And so certainly get out there and talk to those folks if you're in that situation. We're looking at extending deadlines for crop insurance, for NRCS programs. We have some disposal programs for those with some euthanized livestock, and NRCS. It's not a perfect fit, but it's a little bit of a help. So there's always other pieces there too, Clinton.
All right, well, appreciate the insight. And thank you so much for keeping us up to date on how that's going. Of course, we'll try to have you back on as we go through this process over the next few months. Really appreciate that. Let's get to a few other items to discuss today. Another 2.1 million people have filed for unemployment benefits last week. That's the latest number from the Labor Department and puts the 10-week total at more than 40 million people. Now, in an effort to both help farmers and folks in need, USDA is giving away boxes of food across the country as part of its Farmers to Families Food Box program at Secretary Sonny Perdue in Greensburg, Pennsylvania at the Westmoreland County Fairgrounds on Wednesday. You can see that line of cars stretched for a long way. About 1,000 boxes of produce, dairy products were handed out. Secretary on hand there to help even load some of those cars. U.S. Farm Report, Tyne Morgan joining us now. And Tyne, you've been covering this food box program and had a great report on that on U.S. Farm Report last weekend. What did you learn in looking at this program so far?
Really, a lot of folks say this is an innovative program. It's never been done before. I mean, Clinton, you talk about getting food that could potentially go to waste that we were seeing, dairy farmers dumping milk, onion growers not having anywhere to send their onions. So you have all this food going to waste. And, you think, well, we've got to figure out a way to get it to food banks. Well, this program just doesn't give it to food banks. It's all nonprofits. So you think about maybe local churches that have somewhere, that you can go to get food if you are in need, or other organizations like that. So that's what made this so unique. And the dairy groups, Clinton, really singing this program's praises, saying that this really helped all stops of the food chain. I mean, when you look at the producer to the processor and then getting it to the end, to the end product to consumers that need it right now, as we know, unemployment rate continues to rise. They're saying this was the fix that was needed, and it was really a unique way to do that. But we also talked to some produce growers who were saying, listen, there should have been enough money to go all the way around. It left some small producers out, and it broke the middle of the food chain or the supply chain for them. And so there were really some mixed messages, but dairy groups were saying this program was really needed, and farmers are no longer
dumping milk. We've got a great excerpt from your report over the weekend. Let's show people that, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. I think we're trying to get that pulled up here. Just a second there, Tyne. That conversation with Michael Dykes there, and he's been on hand at a lot of these handoffs.
Yeah, he has. And I think this week I saw some pictures. Michael Dykes, president and CEO of the International Dairy Foods Association. You know, Clinton, we talked to him in April when farmers were beginning to dump milk, not knowing when it was going to end. And he was firm in saying, listen, we need a program that purchases food but doesn't put it in storage, because if we put all of this food in storage, we're going to deal with the oversupply problem later, right? This just kind of kicks the can down the road. We need a program that buys products and gets it to those who need it now. And we need it quickly. And so he said that in this is a program that does
I think we've
just
got that
that.
video. Let's see if we can take it now.
This Department of Agriculture has been very creative. They've been very proactive with new approaches to things.
A new approach with the food box program, a program also highlighted at the White House this week.
Thinking about that supply chain and ensuring with $3 billion that those who are vulnerable, that those who are in need get access to boxes like these, 20 to 25 pounds of meat, milk, all forms of dairy, and of course great fresh produce is incredibly virtuous.
Dykes says with 36 million Americans unemployed, lines are growing at food banks. And instead of farmers dumping milk, the program's helping getting dairy from the farm to those who need it most.
We are now using that channel to take food through the chain and get it out to nonprofits. It is a novel concept. It's never been done before.
They're talking a little bit about doing something different, something unique, something that they've not really ever done before there. Obviously, from a dairy price, we've heard from many people that say this kind of rescued prices, at least for now, for Q3, Q4. So where do you think we go from here? What else did you learn?
Well, some of the produce growers that were critical of the program, just saying there were some kinks that need to be ironed out. I mean, this is a new program that USDA unveiled. They said this has legs to last even post COVID-19, Clinton. And so if they can get this program really ironed out and we can figure out a way to get it from farm through the processor to fork and help those that need food right now continuing for the months to come, even years to come, they think this is a program that could be here to stay.
Now, you're busy this afternoon. You've got a great panel discussion that you're going to be hosting virtually, and folks can log in to see that. Let us know what are you doing and where they can go.
Yeah, we have our Farm Country update this afternoon for Farm Journal, and it's really a good mix of producers and growers. We have a rancher from South Carolina, a rancher also from Florida who actually exports cattle and is having problems because she usually uses airlines to export her animals. She's having problems right now as airlines keep canceling on her, to a small grower in Georgia who's saying his county and his area was hit the hardest by COVID-19 deaths. And he's just trying to figure out a way to survive right now. So we're going to talk to them about how COVID is impacting their operations, as well as you talked about CFAP. So is that enough right now? Is that enough to help them? One of those producers says it's not just airlines really that are on their last life, some right now, but it's really producers that need help really to get them going. And so we'll talk about CFAP and some of those other programs just to see not only how COVID-19, Clinton, is impacting them right now, but how it could change their business model for years to come. And that's really something that we're trying to explore, because it will change some operations. And right now, some producers are just trying to figure out exactly how their operation will look post-COVID-19.
Thank you so much. FarmJournal.com. You'll see the Farm Country Update banner there. Folks want to register. That's this afternoon. Please feel free to go there and log on, and you can watch the entire panel discussion with Tyne in the group there. Thanks so much, Tyne. Really appreciate that. Meanwhile, our neighbors to the north aren't isolated from the impacts of COVID-19. The border between the U.S. and Canada has essentially been closed to everything except essential trade and transportation. Sean Haney, he's with Real Ag Radio, joins us now. And Sean, you've been covering the impacts of COVID-19 there in Canada. Obviously, how similar do you think it is to what the U.S. has been dealing with?
Oh, Clinton, great to be with you here today. Yeah, very similar. I think we're running on pretty well equal parallels in terms of the impact that COVID-19 has had on the food chain. Tyne's conversation with Michael Dykes from the IDFA, similar stuff happening here. We saw milk dumping happening in Canada. Thankfully, the supply management program there does provide the opportunity for the growers to be repaid for some of that dumped milk. The group kind of takes the hit overall altogether on that, but we've had the challenges in the beef processing sector, the pork processing sector. We've had issues where the fruit and veg industry can't get temporary foreign workers into the country. It's like all on the exact same path and the exact same narrative. And the good thing is that it looks like the trend is our friend, and we're on the path here to recovery.
We were talking with Undersecretary Northey about the program that the U.S. has put in place to try to help with some of those things. Has Canada done something similar to try to shore up the ag industry in the meantime, or no?
Interestingly enough, not really. That is one of the major differences. It is I would say for some commodity groups, it is a real sore spot. What we've seen the current Liberal government do in Canada under Prime Minister Trudeau is try to talk about, maybe we need to be using some of these current business risk management programs more, where they have not shown an indication of doing like ad hoc direct payment programs like we've seen in the MFP or the CFAP program. The other thing that they've done is they've sort of underwhelmingly funded, in my opinion, a set-aside program for beef and pork producers. That's kind of been the big difference here. There is no direct payment programs for producers. And if you talk to soybean growers in Ontario, they're upset about that. You talk to a lot of beef producers in Western Canada, they look at what's happening south of the border and they're sort of saying, man, like, we're going to have a hard time being competitive if we're going to see these kinds of payments going to U.S. farmers. Our commodities are priced off the U.S. exchange. And U.S. growers and producers are getting this kind of money, and we're not. That's a competitiveness issue going forward for some of these sectors.
Yeah, interesting. Sean, we saw some pictures just a little bit ago. The Secretary of Agriculture meeting with some counterparts via the computer about the USMCA deal, supposed to start in July. Canada still feeling good about that deal and moving forward with it?
Oh, absolutely. If you talked, well, for the majority of the sectors, of course, dairy is still not exactly super ecstatic about it, and they were looking for an August 1st implementation date instead of July 1st for some financial reasons. But if you look at all the exportable commodities, beef in particular, super excited that we were able to maintain current market access levels. Of course, Clint, we've talked a lot about how the beef chain is so integrated across Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. So everybody was just kind of trying to hold the status quo as opposed to losing anything. I think for the exportable commodities, they are very excited that we're going to put this behind us and move forward.
Yeah. One of the other things happening in Canada this week is some trial stuff around Huawei. Explain that for us and where that sits today, because big news yesterday about that.
Yeah, so this has been one, Canada has really been used as a bit of a pawn or a ping pong ball between the U.S. and China in this economic trade war. And now Australia kind of getting some of the same sort of brunt that Canada has received from China. China, instead of acting out against the U.S., has sort of taken some of their frustration out on U.S. allies like Canada and Australia. So what we had yesterday was the BC Supreme Court made a ruling on double criminality and essentially saying that the Huawei CFO, Ms. Meng, basically she was trying to get out of this and get sent back to China because she said she didn't break Canadian law. Because Canada does not have anything against Iran. And so the judge basically said, listen, if you lied to a bank in the U.S., that's the same sort of thing in Canada. You'd be in trouble. And so therefore, this is going to move ahead. This is a long process. It's a real sensitive issue for, in particular, Western Canadian producers, because China, right after she was, the extradition arrest happened in December of 2018, 2 Canadians were illegally detained in China. They are still in China in captivity. And basically, China also said, we're going to cut back on canola. They took away 2 export licenses for our 2 largest canola exporters. Canola is one of our biggest profit-making crops on the prairies. It's a beautiful yellow flower that also provides some profit to farmers as well. And we've been trying to get some of that export market back. It's been a very, very slow process. We've had success into the European Union, but we'd like to get that Chinese market back. And today, I think producers are sort of sitting there waiting to see if China lashes out against Canada like they have previously.
Boy, a lot of things at play here, Sean. As a reporter and a journalist, as someone that's tried to cover this, what's that been like for you over the last month?
It's been very interesting. I've learned a lot about the food system through this COVID-19 situation. A lot of times in agriculture, we talk lots about, man, consumers just don't understand us. They don't understand, farming and food, and we gotta make this connect. And what we've, I think, sort of found out is even inside our agricultural bubble, we maybe didn't know as much about the food system as maybe we thought. We've learned a lot through this. And, you look at the difference between food service restaurant versus people buying in grocery stores and how that packaging is different and how things are going in different directions for different uses. Boy, I'll tell you what, it has been a real learning experience in trying to understand that and see the effect that all of this has had on the consumer as they try to make sure that there's food on the plate.
Yeah, and it is interesting because there really isn't a pattern to follow here, right? Where everybody from top to bottom is making this up as we go. It's not like we've got experience dealing with this type of pandemic in the past, or at least on this scale. It has been interesting to watch, and I agree with you. I do think we've learned a lot. I think people are more interested in the food system than they've been in a long time. We kind of taken it for granted for generations. On that front. And so I do feel like, people are asking questions that they haven't asked before. Like, why would farmers dump milk? I don't understand why, I can't even get it at the grocery store, and not making that connection. But now getting a chance to have those conversations, maybe everybody's a little more in tune, and we change some conversations here going forward.
Yeah, and I would include some of the meat processing sector into that too. I think that, we've had more conversations in mainstream media about meat processing in the last 6 weeks than probably we have in the last 6 years. Right. And it's been a complex situation between the health of the workers, trying to deal with the animals appropriately, trying to make sure that they're not getting too backed up at the farm gate. It's been a real challenge, and everybody kind of working together between the unions and the packers and the producers to try to make all this happen, while the consumer is really with a microscope looking and seeing what exactly is going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Sean Haney with Real Ag joining us there. Appreciate that. So much passion on all sides of the aisle here. Obviously, a very complex situation, which is why we're continuing to cover this coronavirus and the pandemic so heavily. Remember, you can go to agweb.com/coronavirus for the very latest in our coverage, or just go over to agweb.com for everything else that's happening across the agricultural industry. Thanks so much for joining us today on Farm Journal Live. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great afternoon.
It started as social distancing, self-isolation, and caring for loved ones. A time for agriculture to be proud, to be essential. Now, it's changing. While states start to reopen and jobs resume, out here, the clouds are building. The path is uncertain. It's not the first time, it won't be the last. But we'll farm on. This soil is soaked in generations of sweat, of reinvention, of grit. Farm on is a calling. It's a mantra, a mindset. When the horizon dims and things turn dark, we'll find the light. We may be doing this for you, but we're also doing it for them. 2020, now's the time to farm on.